Now, as the Syrian conflict deteriorates into a bloody civil war, it once again highlights the increasingly tense relationship between the U.S., Iran, and Israel. The rhetoric has heated up so much that all sides are weighing in, leaving it up to you and me to sort through the rhetoric and find the truth. So what can we expect from each country as they struggle to gain the upper hand in a political play that may not favor anyone? Will one country act without the other? And where will all the fear-mongering lead to? Here to help us break this all down is Jamal Abdi, Policy Director at the National Iranian American Council. Hey, Jamal, thanks for coming on.
Sure.
So you've worked in Congress for a while, and you are pretty much an expert when it comes to U.S. foreign policy affairs regarding Iran. We just heard General Dempsey recently talk about, quote, he said, diplomacy, sanctions, and sabotage need more time. When we're talking about Iran sanctions here, are they really achieving the desired result, or will it inhibit a true diplomatic solution here?
That's actually the problem here, that sanctions have, in many regards, stood in the way of a diplomatic solution. The last time that the U.S. and Iran actually went to the table, a few months ago, the real problem was that Iran did put some offers on the table as far as curbing their nuclear program, and they wanted in exchange for the U.S. or the EU to curb some of their sanctions. This was supposed to be a sort of near-term confidence-building step. Now, I'm not saying that the Iranians necessarily were asking for the most equitable deal possible, but they definitely wanted a quid pro quo, at least on a limited level, and the U.S. was unwilling to give up any of the sanctions in order to get an Iranian deal. So really, the sanctions haven't been so much leverage in order to get the Iranians to do, what the U.S. wants it to do. The sanctions have been sort of a testament to how tough we're willing to be. And unless Iran is willing to fully capitulate, it seems like the U.S. is unwilling to lift them, and so they're just going to continue to escalate. The tensions are going to continue to mount, and we're going to get closer and closer to a military confrontation.
And we see there's Obama right there signing, the new sanctions that we saw on Iran. When he talks about sabotage, you talked about the assassination of nuclear scientists and also the Stuxnet virus. All of these things and what you're saying, the sanctions really are causing much more harm than they are good. But I wanted to say something else that Martin Dempsey said recently, which he said, quote, an attack by Israel unilaterally would, quote, clearly delay but probably not destroy Iran's nuclear program. We already know Netanyahu's really aiming to take this out, Jamal. But what is he saying here? Is he saying, hold up, don't attack Israel unless we're on board? What does this rhetoric really mean when you break it down?
If you go to any of the military officials who actually, anybody that Americans can name, Dempsey, Petraeus, Robert Gates, Leon Panetta, all these guys are saying the same thing. We don't want war with Iran. The Israeli national security establishment is saying the exact same thing. Really, you have one guy, Bibi Netanyahu, and perhaps Ehud Barak, who are really driving this policy, as well as neoconservatives here in the United States. But the reason that these guys are saying this is because there is no military solution. Any way you look at it, if Israel goes in with strikes, they manage to delay the program in Iran maybe 1-2 years yet, which is actually decide to build a nuclear weapon, to actually expel IAEA inspectors and go forward with a nuclear weapons program, which, as maybe not a lot of people remember, but in 2007, the U.S. National Intelligence Estimate said Iran shelved its nuclear program. It suspended it. It put it on ice, and it still has continued to keep it sort of in this suspended state. So if we actually go to war with them, we buy a little bit of time, but then we end up guaranteeing what we're trying to prevent, which is an Iranian nuclear weapons program. And
we've been hearing this rhetoric for pretty much the last decade, plus, about the Iran nuclear program. It reminds me of the Condoleezza Rice, we can't wait till the mushroom cloud, the whole Iraq buildup. But, talk a little bit about the program itself. Are they building a nuclear weapon? We heard Petraeus come out say that they weren't. You just talked about how they kind of have it in suspension here. What rhetoric can we really believe when it comes to their nuclear program and how far it's gone?
We should take all the rhetoric with a big grain of salt, but, what the Israeli intelligence, what U.S. intelligence, what everybody's in agreement about is the fact that they're not actively building a weapon. Now, Iran is probably pursuing a hedging strategy. They're putting together these capabilities. These are civilian capabilities, but they could be converted into military capabilities. They're also potentially doing research on the military side of things. But they haven't flipped that switch. They haven't made that decision. They're still keeping their options open. And that's why, President Obama consistently says, at the end of the day, this is about convincing the Iranians it's not in their interest to pursue a weapon. Military strikes doesn't do that. The sanctions, really, when we talk about sanctions buying time, they're buying time to convince Bibi not to go in and strike. And in the meantime, they're hurting civilians in Iran. We're seeing new reports every day about medical supplies drying up, ordinary people getting hit. I
don't think a lot of people realize the damage that sanctions do. But Jamal, to wrap this up really quickly, I wanted to talk to you about using Syria. I mean, here, geopolitically, Syria is a very hotbed right now, and we see a lot of rhetoric, not only about the Assad regime, but also about Iran sending in help to back Assad. Are we going to use Syria as kind of a proxy playground to build up this rhetoric even more and to potentially use it as a means to, do military action?
I think that the trouble here is that we have real suffering inside of Syria, and a lot of these, U.S., Iran, they're all jockeying for influence. Nobody's actually talking about solving this problem. When you have the parties not willing to actually engage one another, when you have the U.S. excluding Iran from the talks, that's not a way to a solution. That's a way to more confrontation. I would note that one of the real concerns about the Syria situation is that some folks are arguing that this provides a window to go into Iran, not Syria, but go into Iran because this disrupts the supply routes to Hezbollah, and so the retaliations against Israel wouldn't be as severe as otherwise they would be. So you have a lot of people trying to take this as an opportunity to pursue their own agenda, and I think it's just really problematic when you have so much suffering going on that people aren't actually pursuing a real solution.
Absolutely, seizing upon the moment to just really pursue their geopolitical interests. When you have Bahrain, the suffering going on there. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your opinion, Jamal.
Thank you.
Jamal Abdi.